Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to address an interesting argument I've often heard, that Justin Trudeau started off as a good leader, a refreshing alternative to Stephen Harper, but as the years went on, he became less and less appealing. However, I want to challenge that perspective by focusing on a specific economic policy Trudeau introduced right at the start of his tenure as Prime Minister in 2015. I argue that this one decision set the standard for the consistent incompetence we've faced over the last 9 years. It's not just that Trudeau's policies worsened over time. No, it's the fault of the Canadian people for not recognizing that Trudeau was a poor leader and planner from the very beginning. The policy we're going to look at today is the elimination of income splitting for families. Upon taking office in 2015, Justin Trudeau's government eliminated the income splitting policy for families, which had been introduced by the previous Conservative government under Stephen Harper. This policy allowed families with children under 18 to transfer up to $50,000 of income from the higher earner to the lower earner, potentially reducing their overall tax burden. The elimination of income splitting was controversial, especially among higher income families, those in small businesses, doctors, and self-employed individuals, people who worked hard, earned the fruits of their labor, and achieved success. Success should be rewarded, not something to be ashamed of, as many nowadays try to make it seem. Becoming successful and wealthy in Canada, or any Western country, is not a mark of shame. The system is designed to reward those who achieve success, whether they are small business owners, doctors, self-employed individuals, or entrepreneurs. Critics argued that removing income splitting increased the tax burden on traditional single-income families, particularly those where one parent stayed home to care for the household. Trudeau's government claimed this was an effort to target tax benefits toward middle and lower income families, but it was deeply unpopular among those who lost this benefit. Moreover, it didn't substantially help those higher income individuals who form the backbone of our economy. This decision likely contributed to capital flight in the early years of Trudeau's tenure. I can tell you from personal experience, having doctors in my close family, that they suffered significantly. Some who were planning to become doctors, now, almost 10 years after this decision, chose to work in the United States or other countries because they felt Canada was no longer a viable place to work. This has now become evident in the current doctor shortage in Canada. The Fraser Institute found that eliminating income splitting led to an increased tax burden on single-income families compared to dual-income families with the same household income. This is particularly unfair. Why should a family with one parent working hard to support the household be taxed more heavily than one where both parents work? It's not fair. It punishes those who are trying to do the right thing, and it's unjust. Another think tank, the C.D. Howe Institute, highlighted that without income splitting, fewer families had effective tools to manage their tax burden, particularly when there was a significant income disparity between spouses. This reduction in financial planning flexibility made it harder for some families to manage their finances optimally. The Institute of Marriage and Family Canada stated that the elimination of income splitting penalized traditional family structures, where one parent stays home while the other works. By removing this policy, the government effectively devalued the economic contributions of stay-at-home parents, making it more difficult for families to choose between staying home with their children or being forced into the workforce. This policy didn't just harm single-income families, it attacked the traditional family structure, rooted in the historical family traditions of early Canadians. Trudeau's postmodernist mindset is severely against the traditional family. Removing income splitting devalued the contributions of stay-at-home parents and made it harder for families to decide how best to care for their children. Some families that could have had a mom or dad at home now have to send both parents to work, which means less supervision and care for their kids. Some might argue that this doesn't affect many families, but in reality, it does. Canada is a country with historically strong family traditions, as evident in many of the early groups that made this country, whether from Protestants, Catholics, Native Americans, or the early Canadians. This was an attack on those traditions, an attack on the family itself. Furthermore, this move increased gender inequality. The policy aimed to enhance gender equality by encouraging dual-income households, but in reality, it pressured women into the workforce, sometimes into jobs they didn't want, purely out of financial necessity. The government, by doing this, made life harder for families, punished success, and tried to increase economic output by punishing the average Canadian family structure. The Fraser Institute also discovered that the supposed benefits of eliminating income splitting, such as redistributing income to lower-income families, were minimal and ineffective. It did not help those who needed it most and, in fact, likely harmed more Canadians than it helped. Political think tanks like the Manning Centre highlighted that the elimination of income splitting alienated traditional family-oriented people, family-focused individuals, and conservative thinkers. This policy may have gained political points for Trudeau, but did so at the cost of people's lives, livelihoods, and creating capital flight from Canada. The evidence from these think tanks clearly shows that, back in 2015, Justin Trudeau's policies were flawed from the start. The problems we face today are the consequences of decisions made nearly a decade ago, and it is our fault, as Canadians, for not recognizing the true nature of the leadership we were dealing with. The signs were there from the beginning, and now we are paying the price. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching this opinion piece on Econ Opinion. Have a wonderful day, wherever you are.